still on? Hello, and welcome to Cahnmanns Current Events Roundtable. And we have a wonderful guest today, Gary. Hi. And Gary has been, how many shows have you done already?
I believe this is my third show.
Your third show.
Thank you again for having me.
Yes, Gary Kulik. And Gary is now in an MBA program for health program for health administration.
That's
correct?
Yes.
Yes. And you're going to be talking about, each week I have somebody on we talk little different things about politics. Today is Gary Kulik, and who is a millennial, and he's going to be talking about the misconceptions of conservatism. But before we speak, I want to thank our sponsor, the Blue Cross Restaurant, for providing us with an amazing lunch today.
Absolutely.
It was absolutely great.
Oh, it's delicious.
Great
Every time you go, it's
service,
delicious.
great lunch. And also, my crew that never gets really talked about, they're great. My director, Larry Beyer, and my camera crew, Ron Levitsky and Irv Walenka. I want to thank you all today for being here and showing up all the time to do the show. Rain, snow, whatever, you're always here, and we love you guys. So again, thank you for helping with Cahnmanns Roundtable. Let's go into misconceptions about conservative. You're a millennial, right?
That is correct.
You're called a millennial, and what you're called because of qualified millennials. What is a millennial? Because a lot of people, is it somebody that's under 20, over 20, under 30, under 40? Who is a millennial?
So I want to say it's anyone that was born in between 1980 and 1998, if that is correct. I don't know if I have those years correct, but in that time frame. So people who are probably currently in either their mid-30s, early 20s, around that age. So
yeah, because I guess I can't qualify for a millennial.
Unfortunately, no. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So many believe, I'm conservative. A lot of people think a conservative is a racist, is a homophobic, is a sexist, is hateful. It's the ultra white right movement that we're sort of like Hitler's children or something. Oh. We're against gay marriage, we're against gays, we're against LGBTQ. What is a conservative? I know you're a conservative,
yes.
And I know you also are a young gay man.
Yes,
correct?
That is correct.
And and you're part Jewish. So
correct.
You're part Jewish, you're gay, you're conservative, you're everything,
yes.
That everybody somehow is against for some reason
Most
or other.
Definitely.
And, I want to talk about why, most people, I know most Jewish people seem to be Democrats, most gay people seem to be Democrats, but there is a different movement as well. There's a conservative, there's the Republican Jewish conservative movement, and there is a gay conservative movement. So I'd like you to talk about the gay conservative movement and why you're conservative, and also I guess you're for President Trump as well.
Most definitely. So starting off, what you were reading off, all those misconceptions, a lot of those are derived from rhetorics that are false, or so I have discovered that they are most definitely false. I just took the time to really do my research and evaluate things. That's just the way my mind works in general. I'm a very curious person. So if you're going to tell me something, and, don't do this, don't do that, don't listen to that, I'm going to get to the bottom of it and find out why you're telling me that. And for quite some time, I didn't like what I was seeing. I was seeing a style of government that was starting to focus primarily on social issues, and in many cases created a lot of divisiveness. And I did not like what I was seeing. And I started to kind of take the time to learn about conservatism on my own, because in higher education, it is not spoken about. at least exactly what conservative values and viewpoints are. It's not being spoken about or talked about in higher education. It's certainly not being talked about in the media. So you really have to do your own research and dig deep and find out for yourself. And ultimately what I discovered is conservative values go down to what our founding fathers had in mind for our country. Abiding by a constitution, a constitutional republic, and creating amendments, First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, Second Amendment rights, the right to bear arms and defend yourself. Those are the values of America, because that is how our foundation was created. It was also created so that people could not fear prosecution of a religion that they're practiced. So originally it was a Christian nation, right? Because Christians were being prosecuted. So really it's always had a open mind to freedom of religion. So when people are accusing conservatives of being anti-gay or anti-Semitist, you have to understand that there are some religions that frown upon certain things, and so in a country that was originally founded on freedom of religion, you have to keep in mind that maybe some people that are who belong to that political party are going to have, are going to abide by religion. And that's how, maybe some of those misconceptions arrive from, because we do have a lot of people on the right who are very conservative and they are religious and they abide by their religion. And it doesn't mean that they hate gay people. It doesn't mean that they're anti-LGBT, but they do believe in their religion. And the right has been known to defend freedom of religion.
Like in the Bible,
the Bible,
states, man sleeping with another man is an apparition.
Yes, but also, I think there are some people that they do believe, that if they don't want to perform a gay marriage in their church, that they should have the right to refuse that. If they're a Christian bakery and they don't want to bake a cake for a gay couple because they feel it goes against their values and their religion, then, they have the right of freedom of religion. That is the foundation of our country.
And that doesn't upset you?
It doesn't upset me because I don't give in to the victimhood mentality. I respect that you have a religious belief, and if I don't, you can refuse me service. But hey, I can do the same thing too, right? I have the right to refuse service. Say if I owned a business and I didn't like. If I felt something, went against my values or whatnot, right? Mm-hmm. I can refuse service too, right? Yeah. But theirs is more derived from religion, and if they want to use, if they really truly feel that they're going against the religion and being immoral by performing a gay marriage in their church or baking a cake for someone in their bakery, that is their value. I think it's discriminatory, and I think it's not very it's not kind, but they have that right. They have freedom of religion, and they feel they are going against their religion. They have a right to practice that freedom of religion,
even if they're open to the public. Yeah. But I mean, they still could bake a cake, but they just won't put the two figures of two men or two women on it.
And my whole thing is, as an individual, if I was in that situation, why would I want to pressure you into going against your religion and your values to bake me a cake, when I can go to all these other bakeries that will be able to do it, when I can go to other churches that will say, yes, we can have a gay marriage ceremony in our church, no problem. Why would I want to pressure you to go against your values and disregard you of your freedom of religion? Mm-hmm. That's the opinion I have on that.
So people are making this to-do because a certain bakery or a certain church or synagogue or temple won't allow it. So they just keep harping on that same one.
And my whole thing, again, why play victim and say, oh, they didn't let me get a bake, when you have other options? Don't play victim. go take advantage of the other options and places that will say yes.
Why are conservatives considered, if somebody's from the conservative movement, right away they think they're a white supremacist? Is white supremacy and conservatism one of the same, or are they different?
So I truly believe that narrative came from the alt-right, which was a group that tends to have values that focus on nationalism. And some of these opinions tend to be anti-immigration. They feel that maybe the United States was supposed to be more of a white nation. And again, going back to history, that is what it was. Most of the ancestry that was colonizing the United States was all from Europe. However, over the years, that's changed. People have immigrated to our country from all over the world because we've become, an example of a nation that, freedom is what we, is what our country is all about. And you know what? That is a desire for anyone, no matter what religion, race, gender, sexual orientation, whatever it is. Everybody likes freedom, or at least if you're in this country, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't like freedom, well, go somewhere else, right? Because that's what we're about in this nation. And so I think ultimately it started out as a very white Christian, but it's changed because, we've kind of opened our doors and said, okay, well, anyone who likes freedom, come on in.
But there's two organizations. There's the white supremacy movement, which is the alt-right, and then there's the Antifa movement that people are not talking about because the Antifa movement, to me, is, if they talk about the right being very bad, that they haven't talked about this very strong left movement that I think is in Oregon right now. Am I correct? In Portland, and it's being over. Nobody's talking about it. It's like there's a big movement. There are people that are right. They're conservative, and they're from the media. They're getting hit. They're getting severely injured. And nobody's really talking about this Antifa movement, which, is just the opposite of the alt-right. But you hear in the media everything, they're even calling our president a white supremacist, and yet no one's addressing the Antifa movement. Maybe just on one of the stations, there are like one of the Fox News station, I heard it recently, and I listened to all the other stations as well, and it's like it doesn't even exist. What's going on there? So
quickly going back to the whole white supremacy thing and where those narratives are coming from. So talking about the alt-right and maybe some of these white supremacist groups and those opinions, those ideas and opinions do not align with your average conservative. It's actually a very, very small percentage when taking that into consideration, and that's what I kind of have realized when I've gotten involved in conservative politics. I've attended rallies and political events, and I'm definitely realizing it is a very, very small percentage of people who for some reason ended up and claim to be a conservative. Their values do not align with your average typical conservative, just like Antifa would not align with, I'd like to think Antifa, their extreme ideals would not align with your average liberal, Democrat, or even socialist, because they're violent, they're hateful, and I'm sorry, that's just not what is considered to be good morality and something that you should want. Now, the idea behind Antifa was more inspired during the Mussolini era, and it was a group that was basically anti-fascist, and they would fight fascism by basically doing what Antifa does, getting dressed up, covering their faces, and protesting, and even getting violent at some points. But the difference is what the cause was and what they were fighting. They were truly fighting a fascist dictatorship at the time in Italy, and what we have now is not a fascist dictatorship. This is
a terrorist group.
I
think they should be qualified as a terrorist group.
Because of the violence,
yes.
I would, the violence that it causes and people getting injured and and the irrationality behind it, I would, I personally do consider it a domestic terrorist group. That would be the proper term. Now, again, what they're fighting, I mean, this is a president, we're talking about President Trump now. This is not a fascist dictator. Now, he's been called a nationalist, but ultimately, he really is his own person.
What is
a populist,
when you say nationalist,
perhaps.
what are they talking about, a nationalist? There's so many, this terminology, nationalist, populist. What is the difference? What is a nationalist? So our viewers will understand some of these. This terminology is like, they just keep throwing it out, like, you're a racist. Every time if I pick up this, cup, I'm called a racist. But, I mean, it's just words that are thrown out continuously. And what is the proper, we need to hear the proper reasons and the proper names for this. What is what we were just talking about, populist and a nationalist?
So I would like to think a populist tends to have the greater good of the people at interest, greater good of the population per se, hence populist. And a nationalist, it seems, has maybe the greater good of interests of a nation. But the difference is, I think, again, this president tends to be more in the center when it comes to certain things, and is trying to put our country and our nation and its interests first. And I think the reason people people get that confused is because when you think of a dictator, it's almost like changing the way everything operates so much, because for the last 8 years our government was it was under President Obama's administration, and when you have a candidate who is running a campaign and saying, we're going to change a lot of things. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. For some reason, I think a lot of people maybe get frightened of that, right? Because you're talking about making a lot of changes, and it's concerning because in the past you have seen some dictators that have come in and they're like, we're going to change this. It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. And what happened? Concentration camps happened. Famine happened.
So
you name it.
So they're really comparing. I know they compare, and I get this in Facebook all the time with cartoons. They keep comparing Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler. I mean, it's a continuously. I get these things all over, and why would they do that? Because of Adolf Hitler, he started that way, getting the people all together. And I mean, what is your count on this? What is your feelings of why is the comparison so valued right now?
I truly think it's because people are seeing similarities to the fascist dictatorship, seeing the similarities, slight similarities, but they're misinterpreting a lot of things. So, for example, all that Donald Trump is saying is, let's enforce our immigration laws. So if someone is here illegally, they're going to be held accountable for not following the law, and we're going to put them in a temporary holding place. Now, unfortunately, there were a couple deaths in some of these holding places and facilities, and any death is a tragedy. But the difference is, the death was not being done deliberately, right? It was because, I view it as almost like, let's say, patient neglect. You had too many people in a facility, and not everyone was getting the right attention they needed. Maybe, not enough people to say, okay, did that person eat today? Did that person shower today? So overcrowded. The facilities were so overcrowded.
We never expected all these people, thousands of people coming here. This has never happened before.
It was unfortunate because, unfortunately, the reality is we do not have enough space and room to accommodate people that are being held in a temporary place while going through the process of figuring out whether they're going to be deported back to their home country or not. And so I view it as more neglect, unfortunately. Whereas back in Nazi Germany, or fascist dictatorships, they deliberately took these people into concentration camps, tortured them, and murdered them. These people are not being tortured. They're not being murdered. They may not be in the best conditions, unfortunately, and it's overcrowded. And my heart does ache for them because it's unfortunate.
Comparison, but you're right. They're not going into ovens, and they're not being shot, and they're not being put against a wall, and little children and people getting shot and killed.
The intent is to abide by our current immigration laws, and to do that, you put in a temporary hold in place until we determine what is going on with your deportation process.
What we really need to do is make sure that all these countries, if they want to leave their country, that it's set up. There's holding places or places in that country or a country nearby so that they can go for asylum. We need to straighten out that system so millions of people just don't come in from all over the world into the United States.
Most definitely.
We just don't have the room,
Absolutely.
To hold these people. But then we get criticized when all these people come illegally, not legally, because there's so many people that are trying to get here legally. This is the situation. But again, so some of these like populism and white supremacy and what we were talking about before, the definitions are a little bit different, and people are just throwing out these words, and they do not know the difference between them.
Exactly. And again, the white supremacy, and I think people feel that it is a white supremacy issue because, unfortunately, the group that is being targeted the most are people illegally immigrating here from Mexico because of such easy access to cross the border.
But I think it's more from Guatemala, Honduras, and
right.
Yeah.
Either way,
yeah.
It is a Latino, part of the Latino minority group, and so they feel that he is targeting immigrants from that
San Salvador.
But it just so happens those are the people who tend to be illegally immigrating into the country. I mean, granted, there are probably some from Europe, some from Canada, but you have to also keep in mind.
I don't think it's many from Mexico, but from the countries, El Salvador, Honduras.
Correct.
Yeah.
Either way, the point is it's happening too frequently, and in addition to that, there are concerns as well as in some cases, not everybody that is actually doing this has good intentions. Some people are bringing drugs. Some, sex trafficking is a whole separate issue within itself.
And people are paying parents like $80 to bring a child so they can get into this country, claiming it's their own. And when the DNA shows up, they're not theirs.
That is the concern.
I mean, $75 and $80 to buy a child.
I would like to think that most people that are doing this, they have good intentions. They just want a better life for themselves, as does everyone that immigrates to this country. But the difference is the people that are here and have done that and have good intentions, they went through the process legally. So if you want to have a better life, you go through the process legally. It's quite difficult. I understand that. It's gotten only more difficult over the years. When my grandparents came here from 1964, it was difficult. They immigrated here from Poland. They had to have a sponsor. It was difficult then. I can only imagine how much more difficult it has gotten.
I think my grandparents.
So I think that's why a lot of people
just from Ellis Island.
Do it illegally. But the problem is we are undermining that not all these people have good intentions. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're bringing sex trafficking. They're stealing vehicles from the California, San Diego, Los Angeles, and driving them back over to Mexico and selling them for profit.
So Gary, how are you feeling, that you're different than most people, in your category, if you want to call it category, you got there's so much, you're conservative, you're gay, you're Jewish, what do you feel? How are people treating you? Do they treat you, they accept you for what you are and who you are? Or are you having, are people kind of, what are you feeling right now about what's going on in your life?
So a lot of people who...
We have 10 minutes to talk about this.
So a lot of people that know me on a personal level, they know that I have only good intentions. But for people that don't know me on a personal level, they are very quick to judge what my opinions and beliefs may be. When the reality is I don't have hate in my heart. And People that know me on a personal level, they know that. So when I was first opening up and being true and about my beliefs, a lot of people just were very quick to judge and didn't want to even question my beliefs, to assure that I didn't have bad intentions. And there were a couple friends that I had that were minorities, and I was really afraid to find out how they would react when they found out that I did vote for Trump. And luckily, I was fortunate enough that they were okay. And they knew me on a personal level, and that I don't have hateful intentions.
Well, it's not only just for your group, but most of the people that are conservatives have a really hard time right now because people they call you racist, they stop talking to you, friends that you've had maybe for several years, all of a sudden stop talking or do not want to go out with you socially. It's very tough for a lot of different people that I've talked to. It isn't just one set of people, and so this is what's going on in society right now, this is the first time, because we've always had different opinions. Some people are independent. They have voted sometimes Republican, sometimes they voted Democrat. No one's really been picked on, but this is the time of, this year has been a very hard year for a lot of people.
Most definitely.
And why are people what do you feel why people have such low tolerance for people, and right away they call you racist? That's the word now that's used for. It used to be racist was a word that was for a certain group of people, maybe from African Americans, and but now it's for anybody. If you don't believe in what other people believe in, you're a racist.
I think a lot of people are really closed-minded, even though they claim they're not. When tested with how closed-minded or open-minded they may be, they don't always pass the test. Now, do they? My mind has always, like I said, worked in a way where I've always been very curious and open-minded. But some people do have a mind that's like a box, and almost like a little game of ping pong, right? Mm-hmm. Or a pinball game, where nothing is able to ever exit that box. Because my mind is like a firecracker. It's constantly exploding and open to new ideas.
I think people need to. If they start to agree to disagree, not to be yelled at, because a lot of people, when you don't have their same ideas, they right away start yelling and screaming. And when people do that, you cannot hear them. I think a good way to do it nowadays is just to agree to disagree.
Most
and I think
definitely.
that would be the ideal thing to do. Not everybody's on the same plane. Not everybody in the Democratic Party thinks the same way. Not everybody in the Republican Party thinks the same way. But if we're more open to one another and just can hear each other out, mm-hmm. and say to them, hey, I agree with this point, but this is the other point that I don't agree with. And we could have a two-way conversation.
Mm-hmm. It's
and
hard
I think
to do
that would be the best, and I think that's what we need to do.
I agree. I am definitely in agreement with that.
Yeah. Well, Gary, I think that I need to invite you back because you're going to be going into healthcare administration, and so we are going to need you back on the show on healthcare, and and we're going to need to hear more about, from your point of view, about healthcare, and should we have healthcare for all, and what we should be doing. So on our next show, we're going to invite you back again to hear your point of view from a medical point of view, because you're going into public health right now, public health administration. So you'll have your MBA pretty soon finished. We are looking to get you back on the show.